It's kind of crazy to think about, but the Nintendo Switch 2 is already a year old. A full year. And honestly, I still don't know if this thing is a massive success story, a disappointment, or somehow both at the same time. Because depending on who you ask, the Switch 2 is either Nintendo's most successful Nintendo system to date, or it's a console that spent the past 12 months getting dragged into arguments about pricing, upgrades, game libraries, and whether Nintendo has lost its mind. So, what do we think about it here at Controller Culture after 1 year on the market? Well, we think the truth is somewhere in the middle, because the Switch 2 is an impressive piece of hardware, stuck in a gaming market that is way harsher than the one the original Switch launched into. Now, because of that, it's dealing with expectations that were practically impossible to satisfy. So let's talk about it. The good, the bad, the weird, and where the Switch 2 stands after its first year. Now, before we get into opinions, let's talk numbers for a second. Because despite all the debates online, the Switch 2 has actually been doing really well. After its first year on the market, Nintendo shipped nearly 20 million units. That's roughly 5 million units ahead of where the original Switch was during its first 12 months. Which is honestly pretty impressive, especially when you consider how much more competitive gaming is now compared to 2017. Back then, the original Switch felt like it arrived at the perfect moment. Now, every company wants your attention, every company wants your money, and somehow, every company also wants you to buy a subscription service. Yet, the Switch 2 still came out swinging. A lot of that was helped by the fact that people could actually find one. Remember the original Switch launch or the PlayStation 5 launch? They were always out of stock. The Switch 2 had far better availability, and it launched with the holiday season falling within its first 9 months, which most certainly didn't hurt the launch. But recently, sales have started normalizing, which suggests that a huge chunk of those early numbers were driven by a launch hype. And yes, that is pretty normal. Every Nintendo console launches with consumers hyped. But while the hardware launch was strong, the conversation around the software got messy almost immediately, because Nintendo decided that the biggest launch game on the system should also become the center of one of gaming's biggest pricing debates. Mario Kart World, a fantastic game and an impressive game. A game that also costs $80. And wow, people had opinions about it. Suddenly, every publisher on Earth looked at Nintendo and went, wait, we're allowed to do that? And then we started seeing more companies testing that $80 price point. Thankfully, a lot of those attempts got major pushback because consumers basically looked at some of these publishers and said, no, you sit back down. And honestly, I think that's why we're starting to see many companies settle back into that $60 to $70 price range. But despite all the controversy, Mario Kart World sold ridiculously well. It being bundled with the Switch 2 bundle certainly helped. But even outside of that, people bought this game like crazy. It's sitting at nearly 15 million copies sold, which is absolutely wild. So clearly the pricing debate didn't stop people from jumping in. Now, that brings us to the big question. What about the rest of the first year? Did Nintendo actually deliver the games? And honestly, this is where my opinions start showing up. Because I think the first year was good, but I don't think it was incredible. For me, the standout game was easily Donkey Kong Bananza. That game was fantastic. The gameplay was great, the visuals were great, the story was surprisingly good. It felt like Nintendo finally gave Donkey Kong the 3D spotlight he deserved. And with over 4.5 million copies sold, I get why. The game was just pure fun. But beyond just DK Bananza, there were definitely some solid releases. Metroid Prime 4, Kirby Air Riders, Mario Tennis Fever, Pokopia, Tomodachi Life, Living the Dream, Yoshi and the Mysterious Book. All good games. All games I'm glad exist. But let's be real for a second. there wasn't that giant system-defining moment. No new 3D Mario, no new 3D Zelda, no Smash Bros, no Animal Crossing. Nothing that made the entire gaming industry stop and stare. And that's okay, because it leads us directly into everybody's favorite Switch 2 topic. Oh yes, the thing people absolutely love discussing online, Switch 2 editions. Now, here's where I might annoy some people, because I actually think most Switch 2 editions are better than they're given credit for. Seriously, I know they're controversial. I know some people hate the idea entirely. But when I replayed Tears of the Kingdom at a smooth 60 frames per second, yeah, I was happy, very happy. That upgrade completely changed how the game felt. And honestly, that's what I wanted. The same great game, just running the way my brain always imagined it should. Some upgrades were definitely stronger than others. Kirby got meaningful improvements and DLC, and some upgrades just felt more worthwhile than others. But overall, I don't think the concept itself is nearly as terrible as people make it out to be. Then we get to another area where the Switch 2 deserves more credit: third-party support. Because this is a massive improvement over the original Switch. We've got games like Resident Evil Requiem, we've got Pragmata, we've got Final Fantasy VII Remake, we've got major publishers actually showing up. And now, we're even hearing about upcoming releases like Modern Warfare 4. Think about that for a second. There was a time when getting big third-party games on Nintendo hardware felt like spotting a unicorn in the wild. Now it's becoming normal. That's a huge win. One of my favorite improvements isn't even a flashy new game. It's the new handheld boost mode. The Switch 2 has quietly made a lot of existing games feel better. Simply put, it makes your Switch 2 handheld performance play as if it was a docked Nintendo Switch. It's one of those upgrades you don't always notice immediately, but once you do, it's very hard to go back. So after 1 year, where do I stand on the Switch 2? I think it's successful. I think it's genuinely good hardware. I think Nintendo has built a strong foundation. But I also think the first year lacked that one unforgettable moment, that one game, that one announcement, that one thing people will still be talking about 10 years from now. Maybe that comes in year 2. Maybe that's where Nintendo drops the next 3D Mario. Maybe that's where the next Zelda appears. Maybe that's where Smash returns and destroys all productivity worldwide. Who knows? But after 1 year, I look at the Switch 2 and see a console with a ton of potential. Not a perfect launch, not a disaster, just a really solid start that still feels like it's waiting for its defining moment. And honestly, I think Nintendo's best Switch 2 year might still be ahead of us.